It's my pleasure to bring out our first speaker to the stage. Gabrielle L. Kurlander is the president and CEO of the AllStars Project. For over 20 years, she has guided the organization's growth from a group of mostly volunteer community activists into a national organization with thriving programs in 4 cities. Today, the AllStars Project reaches tens of thousands of inner-city youth with its innovative and high-quality programs. A significant part of the AllStars Project's success has been in creating a fusion between business, creativity, and community, and Gabrielle embodies this 3-dimensional approach. She began volunteering for grassroots organizations working in poor neighborhoods of Harlem and Brooklyn. She's an accomplished theater director and actor. She has a record of accomplishment in fundraising, organizational leadership, and partnership building. And she created and runs an advanced after-school program for youth leadership called Painting the World, the Art of Painting the World in Different Colors. During her tenure, Gabrielle has led the AllStars Project in raising more than $80 million from private sources. Personally, it is an honor for me to call her a friend, to work with her, and be part of her National Program Leadership Corps. Please welcome me, and please join me in welcoming Gabrielle L. Kurlander.
Thank you, David. Good morning. It's great to be here with you. I was so excited to be coming here today and to see all of you. And isn't it just great to see young people perform? So inspiring. God. Nice first thing in the morning, too. Kind of wakes you up. Thank you for coming today and being part of this conversation about after school, about how the after school helps young people grow, and about how we can grow the after school movement. It's great to be here. You know, it was just a year ago that I sat down with Gigi Pritzker and Michael Pucker, who've been supporting the All-Stars here in Chicago, and since we came here about 5 years ago. And we talked about the importance of creating a dialogue among after-school practitioners so we could share best practices, so we could dialogue about the issues that are facing the communities that we're working in. And we spoke about the role of performance as a model for bringing development to young people in poor communities. We spoke about our desire to connect to researchers who are working in the field, so we could socialize significant discoveries that are being made in youth development and anti-poverty work and anti-violence work. So with the Pritzker-Pucker Foundation on board and Stephen Bowen as early sponsors, we went out to the J.P. Morgan Chase Foundation. We were very pleased to have their enthusiastic support, and then came on board AllStars Matters and, Afterschool Matters, Ingenuity Inc. and the Federation for Community Schools into the conversation, and so this was born. And I want to thank all of them for their generous support. So we are here today to share best practices and ideas in the field of after school, and it's really an honor for me to speak to all of you, people who have so much expertise in your fields and are doing such important work in our communities. I've been part of the after school movement for over 20 years, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about why I think our gathering today is very important and very timely. We're convinced at the AllStars Project that after school has an important role to play in solving some of the most pressing problems facing our country. We think that if after school is used as an environment for growth and development, it's a game changer, not only for our young people, but also for our country. After school growth is about moving young people in poor communities towards a successful and productive life and connecting them to the broader world. It can play a big role in solving the education crisis, and as well as the larger and deepening social crisis in our country. Those of us who are working in the arena, we see our impact every day, and I think now as a field, we have the theoretical basis and we have the track record of success to take the after-school arena to a next level. At the AllStars, we created ourselves from the beginning as a grassroots laboratory for bringing new, sophisticated, far-reaching concepts and practices to poor communities, for creating new kinds of solutions. And we started as community organizers in the South Bronx, in East New York, in Harlem, and we designed our programs. We listened to people in those communities, and they told us what they needed. They said, our kids, are bored, they would love to perform, can you do a talent show? And so the Talent Show Network was born. This is how we created our programs. What we found, though, is that there was a pervasive attitude with respect to anti-poverty work, and an attitude that you can't bring the most advanced ideas to poor communities. You can't bring the most innovative practices to poor people. Poor people aren't smart enough to understand. Poor people aren't advanced enough to use cutting-edge tools. Poor people only need the basics. In our 3 decades of work, in urban communities, we found that nothing could be farther from the truth. In fact, we've seen that in order to move people away from poverty, what you need to give them is the most advanced stuff, the best methodologies, the most advanced practices. How do we know this? What's the proof of its success? Well, I think that if you just look at the privileged and successful among young people in our country, you see what they've had. You see, by virtue of their community background and their family background, they've had a host of developmental after-school experiences, outside of school experiences, that help them grow and that leave them open to learning in a variety of ways. It was just last weekend I was watching the documentary, maybe some of you have seen it, about Ethel Kennedy. And it just really struck me that the Kennedy children, they're 3 years old and they're being put in these environments that are way over their heads, in environments they couldn't possibly understand. As all of you know all too well, poor children don't have these kinds of opportunities. They're isolated with nothing to do, they're bored, they're often living in neighborhoods that are struggling and violent. We must use after school to help children to grow and develop if they're ever going to begin the learning process and function in the environments with their affluent and middle class peers. And the cutting edge practice that we've brought to poor communities is development. And we've brought performance as a tool for development. This grows out of an understanding, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about this today, an understanding that we have about the distinction between learning and development. Learning is, of course, very important, and it's very familiar to us. Development, it turns out, is perhaps somewhat less familiar, but is also very, very important. Development is the capacity to see possibility. The capacity to see possibility and the ability to act on that possibility. In a stable society, when institutions are working and benefit all people, identifying and seizing opportunity is just built into the system. But in an unstable world where systemic breakdown is everywhere, these institutions can't be relied on to carry everyone along. So people need to develop new creative capacities that this moment in history requires. And that's where development comes in. Development ignites your interest in learning. And in fact, research has shown that if you're not developing, learning really isn't possible. There's much research about this, and as Bonnie said, we're looking to encourage more and meet in dialogue with more researchers. One American study you may be familiar with is the 20-year longitudinal study done out of Johns Hopkins by Dr. Carl Alexander. It's sometimes called the summer slide or summer learning loss. It's a study of poor children and affluent children, and what Dr. Alexander found is that during the summertime, affluent school children had a host of experiences. They went on family trips, they were exposed to foreign languages, they read books, they went to their family's workplace, And poor children didn't have these same opportunities. And as a result, he found when they came back to school, the children from poorer backgrounds had lost some of the learning that they had done the year before. They weren't able to come back to school at the same level, whereas the more privileged children were able to retain that learning. We're all working on some very tough issues. There's much that needs to be done, and of course we need to improve our schools. But I don't think that that's the whole answer. Children need to be developed outside of school so when they show up to school, they're ready to learn and they're able to learn. They can be creators of their learning. After-school growth holds a promise to transform the lives of millions of children. We need to expand the after-school arena profoundly and, in my opinion, insist that it really be focused on growth and development for our young people. I think that this burden is on us. We certainly want funders to get behind it. We want policymakers to get behind it. But it's up to us to see this possibility and to act on it. And I think if we do, we can bring millions of children into the mainstream of American life. So it's really wonderful to be with you here today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Our second speaker is Mary Ellen Karen. Dr. Karen is the CEO of Afterschool Matters, a nonprofit that offers Chicago high school students innovative out-of-school activities through Science 37, Sports 37, Tech 37, Words 37, and the nationally recognized Gallery 37 programs. After years as a member of the Afterschool Matters Advisory Board, she took the leadership reins this year and is responsible for managing the organization's over 500-person workforce. Mary Ellen has a long and very distinguished history of service to Chicago's youth and families. She served as commissioner of the Chicago Department of Family and Support Services and as commissioner of the Chicago Department of Children and Youth Services. She was a special assistant to Chicago Public Schools CEO Arnie Duncan and is the founding principal of the Francis Xavier Ward School here in the Loop, serving 900 students. I first met Mary Ellen 3 years ago and was very touched by her uncompromising dedication to serving Chicago's youth, by her passion for the importance of after school for our young people, which she expressed when we spoke together, and her enormous personal warmth. I am very happy she is here to speak with us today. Please welcome Mary Ellen Karen.
Good morning. I just told David he can introduce me anytime. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm happy to talk a little bit about Afterschool Matters in the city of Chicago. Welcome to our young people. You have very good eye contact with the speaker. I was watching you. So the theme of today is growth, and that's something that Afterschool Matters has learned a lot about. As many of you know, Afterschool Matters was founded by the First Lady of the City of Chicago, the late Maggie Daley, and it started in Block 37, which isn't too far from here, with 270 young people in tents. And the idea was that young people could create art during the summer, and it would be a great thing for them to do, and it would also enhance the city. It would get young people downtown, all those great things. So more than 20 years later, we've experienced tremendous growth. We now this year have 22,000 young people participating in programs, high quality programs. And over the years, Gallery 37, as David said, was the first thing. It was about performance and arts. And since then, we've added on Tech 37, Sports 37, Science 37, and Words 37. And so, much like Dr. Kurland said, Mrs. Daley had the idea that young people who didn't have as many options as some others should have those same opportunities in the summer in the beginning, and now it's year-round. Mrs. Daley also had a similar idea to what you and Dr. Newsom talked about, Dr. Filani, when you talked about pretending. She really believed that young people could do many, many things, and that if they were given the chance, they would understand how to do those kinds of things. And so I was very interested when I read your whole idea of pretending. We've never called it that, but that's exactly what it is, that you grow into what you see. And as adults, you know that happens all the time, but sometimes you don't see that when you're a teenager or younger. So I think that whole idea of coming together and and the idea was Mrs. Daly wanted young people to interact with caring adults who actually like teenagers and who were and who were professionals in their field. It was an extraordinary idea at the time, but there are people who like teenagers and there are people who do not. And the more, if you're a teenager, the more you're with those who like you, the better you're going to grow. I mean, it's a simple thought, but it's profound at the same time. And so, I mean, I can't spend a day with a lot of people who don't like me. It does something to me. And so you really need somebody who cares about you and cares about your growth, and so that was the idea. So she understood her role also, and she understood that young people needed a place to show off what they do. And so now we have performances after every cycle of our programming. We have performances where we go and see young people. We invite all of you. This year we tried something different because it had been a little difficult to showcase the Tech 37, the Science 37, the Sports 37, and the Words 37. So we brought some of those young people into our gala this year, and it was a grand success. The people who came to the gala were so impressed with the young people and showing their robotics and all the things that they have done through the summer. So, and I also think, the other thing that I think our after-school programming does is it gives young people hope. I'll tell you one very short story. During one of our performances, it was actually at the Joffrey Ballet, I sat next to a grandma. And the grandma was a lovely lady, and she told me she had this 16-year-old granddaughter who wanted to dance. She applied for Afterschool Matters, and lo and behold, she got into the Joffrey Ballet. And the grandma told me, this experience has changed our whole family. This is the first time that I've been downtown since Marshall Fields was Macy's. And it's the first time and her whole family was there, have ever been at the Joffrey Ballet. And so I think those kinds of experiences that we're trying to make for young people during the after-school program gives young people something beyond what they see in their neighborhood. And literally, as David said, I was the commissioner. I went to places where there was the police station, the fire station, the school, and the liquor store. And sometimes children did not get beyond seeing those places. And so to get them out and to see them in other places is a wonderful thing. I was going to tell you all kinds of things about how we've studied and we've been studied and all that, but you all know it. And so one thing we do know is that the dosage for our program, our young people are better connected to school, and they're more likely to graduate and less likely to participate in risky behavior if they participate in 3 or more of our programs. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what we're working on right now. We're working on career readiness. And the reason we're working on career readiness, well, it's a big thing. First of all, you got to get on the bandwagon with the big thing. But also, we realized there was a study done, and we realized that we were doing career readiness, but we weren't doing it out front. The young people had skills, but they weren't able to articulate them. I've been in schools in neighborhoods all over the country where children are 10 years old and their mother has kept their resume. And then we have young people who are out there performing. They're doing robotics, they're doing all those things, and we say, what's on your resume? And they say, So we're at Afterschool Matters working on career and college readiness. Part of that is to get our instructors on board for that and to train them. The second part is to build resumes and interviews for young people. And the place that we're trying to go is if young people participate in three or more programs, they will get an internship and they will be able to have some kind of experience that's not only, that is work oriented also, and will get a higher pay. So I also want to tell you another story that I just couldn't believe. I was on the L on Saturday, and the L was filled with young people. Not young people, it was filled with everybody. And this young man comes from probably as far as he is and kept saying, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. He comes up to me and he said, do you work for Afterschool Matters? And I said, yes, I have a new job, yes. He said, you were there this summer. And I said, yes. He said, you know, we knew you liked us. And he said, really? He said, I think we should lead a revolution to let young people know we like them. And he said, I just want to tell you, now this is a young man who doesn't look anything like me. We're on the L, and he has the confidence to come up to me and say, the experience was life-changing. I didn't intend to go to college. I'm now at Truman College. He said, and now I talked to my instructor who's trying to get me a scholarship at a vocal school in Florida. And he had the courage and the confidence to come up and say that to me. We want that for all our young people. And there's room for all of us. Just a little bit about the system. It's really hard to work in this environment because we're not education, we're not early childhood. But there's room for everybody. There's room for the organization that has 5 children, and there's room for Afterschool Matters that has 22,000 children. We just have to figure out how to grow the system and to get the policymakers to believe that we're part of it. Longer day of school, if it's good, it's probably great, but longer day if it's not good, young people, especially our teens, they're much better off getting out with people who are in the field that they're in, and they're learning all kinds of things. That's just my opinion. That's no study. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, and then I just want to say a little something about violence. Building non-cognitive skills like self-confidence and persistence, which we're building, engaging teens and children from 3 to 6 or 4 to 7 or whatever the time is on Saturday, building healthy relationships with caring adults, and giving youth a place to perform and show their skills, they're all prevention for violence. So thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Our final speaker is Lenora Fulani. Dr. Fulani is a developmental psychologist and grassroots educator who co-founded the AllStars Project in 1981. She is currently the Dean of UX, the AllStars Continuing Development Initiative for people of all ages, and the Director of Operation Conversation, Cops and Kids, an initiative run in partnership with the New York City Police Department to improve the relationship between inner city youth and police officers. Dr. Fulani is a longtime community activist and has twice run for President of the United States as an independent. She has been an important mentor to me, helping me to grow as a grassroots organizer and as a developer of young people and the poor community. Please welcome Dr. Lenora Fulani.
Wow. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to congratulate David and Bonnie Gilden and Julie and Tiffany and the board from Chicago. It's so wonderful to come here and see how things are growing. It's a real honor also to meet people who are on the ground in the community. For many years, actually many decades, after school has been a kind of outpost in the education field, positioned as supplementary or a non-essential add-on, I might go as far to say that after school is an afterthought for many education policy people. Good to have in the mix if you can, but the real deal, the moments that matter, the things that count, so they think, is what happens in the classroom. But I want to tell all of you who are after-school leaders, innovators, practitioners, supporters, and kids that after school cannot be an afterthought. After school and outside of school learning is becoming a field where the most significant discoveries in social development and creating new anti-poverty tools are happening. I want to briefly share with you one key aspect of the cutting-edge breakthroughs in after school that we have experienced at the AllStars Project. It's performance. Performance as in performing. There's a performance revolution going on in the world, a revolution in which educators, corporate leaders, anti-poverty workers, psychologists, and community servants and kids are bringing performance to the task of development. Let me start by saying I'm not a theater person. I'm a developmental psychologist, a community organizer, and activist. But I've come to understand performance as an activity that helps people to develop. Here's how it works. Performance is the activity of simultaneously being both who you are and who you are not. An actor is always who she is, and at the same time, she is a character. Off stage, performance takes the form of consciously making the choice to simultaneously be who we are and who we are becoming. That is, to try on new roles, to experiment with new ways of relating to others, and in so doing, we develop. I came to the performance revolution through Dr. Fred Newman, who co-founded the AllStars with me. Fred was a university-trained philosopher, a theater director, and playwright who was influenced by the early 20th century developmental psychologist Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky observed that babies develop by creatively imitating the adults and older kids around them. In Vygotsky's words, children develop by performing a head taller than themselves and by being related to in that way. Newman's great insight was that performing a head taller works not only for babies and children, it also helps older young people and adults develop as well. In other words, in contrast to the ideas presented by the psychologist Jean Piaget, development can be a continuous life experience, not something that is over and fixed by the time a child is 5 or 6 years old. This discovery and its application is fundamental to the performance breakthroughs in after school. I just want to give you a couple of examples. One of the programs that we run is the Development School for Youth. It brings young people from poor communities together with corporate leaders, for example, from Latham and Watkins, Nuveen Investments, Equity Residential, and Allstate Insurance. We work with the young people on the performance of being in the business world. We say to the kids, this is not the same performance that you do at home. It's not the same performance that you do hanging out with your friends, but it's a performance that you can learn. In the process, the young people discover that they can create new performances all over the place and in new kinds of situations. One young woman who graduated from our program got into Rensselaer. It's a prestigious engineering school in upstate New York. A few weeks into her first semester, she called me and she said, "Dr. Fulani, I am so lonely. I've never seen so many white people in my life, and they won't talk to me." I told her, well, you have to come up with a new performance. I said, you have to go up to these young white kids and say, hey, I come from Brownsville, Brooklyn, where everybody's black. I'm lonely. I've never seen so many white folks in all my life. Could you help me learn how to make friends here? She sort of gulped and said, really? I said, absolutely. She did it. She went on to make friends, and she graduated. Finally, let me tell you about a program that Newman and I created in 2006 to try to change the culture of mistrust between young people in our communities and officers who police those communities. It's called Operation Conversation Cops and Kids. We started it in 2006 in the wake of the police shooting of a young black man named Sean Bell. He was outside a nightclub in Jamaica, Queens. Since it started, I have led 68 workshops involving 895 young people and 700 or so officers. And 9 months ago, the NYPD made it an official part of the training of New York City police officers. In the workshops, I use play and performance to help cops and kids see each other and relate to each other in new ways. Young people and cops walk the same streets, but in very real ways, they live in very different worlds. The kids walk around every day in fear of, on the one hand, being shot by the kid from the next block, and on the other hand, ending up in jail or worse because they've gotten into some escalating situation with a police officer. They feel trapped, and they see the cops as a hostile occupying force. For their part, the cops are in the community to fight crime, to intervene on violence, and to protect lives. And they see the kids as disrespectful, angry, and potentially violent. The performances that we do break through those walls, separating their experiences and their perceptions, but they are not role-playing in the traditional sense. I ask the cops and kids to do something that they've never done before, to play together. Cops and kids play a family, for example, deciding on a new pet. The next scene, they play the pets. They've never done this before. In moments, they're like falling all over each other with laughter and volunteering to participate because they've forgotten that they hate each other. And then you can build on that. Playing and performing together, where all of them are being who they are not, allows the cops and kids to relate to each other, often for the first time, not as enemies, but as fellow human beings. The performance approach to youth development is not without controversy. It runs against the cognitive grain that shapes and dominates our educational system, and by extension, unfortunately, shapes and dominates much of the after-school movement. Performance isn't about teaching anything at all. Performance provides the experience of creativity. It lets young people play and bring new possibilities into their lives. Does that help them become better learners? Absolutely. Because as they develop, they become worldly, more creative, more appreciative, and more curious. The performance revolution has deep meaning for us in the outside of school movement. It helps us to see that we shouldn't replicate the failings of our public schools. That cannot be our mission. We don't need to give the kids more homework, more classroom time, more information. Just let them play. Let them pretend, let them perform. After school is where and how our young people can grow and develop as people, as learners, as contributing and creative members of our society. Let's help them do that. And as an adult who loves teenagers, let's perform. Thank you.